You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
Happy holidays, everybody, and welcome to the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. This week, we're going to dive into one of the most infamous cold cases ever that involve Christmas holiday season, and that is the murder of JonBenét Ramsey. Now, last year, we did a full deep dive, which you can watch right here. So this week, or I should say this year, we're going to dive into some of the things that still don't make sense about this case. But without further ado, let's dive in. At 5:30 a.m. on December 26, 1996, Patsy Ramsey, a wife and mother living in Boulder, Colorado, got out of bed, headed downstairs in her family's sprawling mansion to make coffee. On the stairs, she discovered something shocking, a ransom note addressed to her husband, John. It began, "Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals who represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the T." The note went on to demand the sum of $118,000 and for the Ramseys to make no contact with the police. Nevertheless, the Ramseys called 911 and reported their daughter, 6-year-old beauty pageant star, JonBenet, had been kidnapped, sparking a search operation. At around 1 p.m., police instructed John and a friend to perform another sweep of the mansion, during which John discovered his daughter's lifeless body in the basement. She had been brutally murdered with a ligature around her neck and what was later found to be a large skull fracture. Sexual assault was also suspected. Nearly 3 decades on, JonBenét Ramsey murder remains one of America's most notorious and disturbing cases. And as continued interest in the case shows, there are still a number of things about it that don't make sense. So right off the bat, you gotta ask yourself, why was JonBenét Ramsey murdered? To this day, opinion is actually split among both professionals involved in the case and armchair true crime enthusiasts like myself to exactly what led to the death of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey. One of the most prevailing theories, however, is that it was a kidnapping gone wrong. Experts have noted the duct tape on the girl's mouth and other effects point towards the possibility that the murderer had initially planned to incapacitate Ramsey and take her from the family home. Author and private investigator John Wesley Anderson, who wrote a book about the case, told The Independent in 2023, quote, "The killer went into that house with a kidnap kit. He brought duct tape, he brought parachute cords, he brought a stun gun to immobilize the victim. So this was very calculated. It was a very methodically executed kidnapping that went wrong and ended up in murder. What might have led a potential kidnapper to murder Ramsey rather than abscond with her as planned remains a mystery. Similarly, why the victim's body would remain at the scene has never been explained. However, others believe that the ransom note may have been a decoy made to throw police off the scent during their investigation. John Ramsey himself stated that he believes a masked intruder broke into the house and murdered his daughter. The second thing that doesn't make sense is the amount demanded in the ransom note. John Ramsey suggested that an unknown intruder who raped a 12-year-old girl in Boulder, Colorado, 9 months after the murder of JonBenet was his daughter's killer. That upon examination, JonBenét Ramsey also showed signs of having been sexually assaulted, supporting this version of events. However, his theory seemingly overlooks the presence of the mysterious ransom note and fails to explain one key detail about its demands. As many familiar with the case point out, $118,000 exact kidnappers wanted from the Ramseys happened to be the exact amount that John Ramsey had received as a work bonus. This seems unlikely to be a coincidence. Instead, it suggests that the would-be kidnapper and killer had knowledge of Ramsey's earnings and may have been someone connected to the Ramseys themselves. However, that the note was written on paper inside the house, that a paintbrush from the house was used to choke her, deepens the mystery, further suggesting a lack of premeditation. And the next thing that didn't make sense is why the crime scene wasn't secured. A missing child case, particularly one involving a ransom note, would seemingly prompt a large and sweeping police operation. But when it came to the apparent kidnapping, the police response seemed surprisingly muted. That John Ramsey was the one to find JonBenet's body after police instructions to search the house suggests how poor a job the police investigators did of searching for the girl in the hours after the alarm was raised. And having John search the house again instead of clearing it of people and treating it as a crime scene had major repercussions for the investigation going forward. On finding the body, the distraught father carried his daughter's body upstairs, leaving the door to the cellar open. Doing so contaminated the crime scene and destroyed what might have been vital evidence that could have helped bring the killer to justice. Before we move on with other things that don't make sense, let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments section below. I want to hear your theories on who murdered her, why was she murdered, and why do you think the Ramseys were kind of hesitant to speak out? Which leads us to the next thing that doesn't make sense, and that is why the Ramseys ceased talking to police. Following the discovery of JonBenet Ramsey's body in the beginning of what was now a murder investigation, suspicions of detectives now turned towards the Ramseys themselves. Initially, the sum demanded by the ransom note drew some to believe that Patsy was behind it. But all of the Ramseys, including JonBenet's older brother Burke, were taken in and made to give samples of their hair, blood, and have their handwriting compared to that of the note. However, as the New York Times reported the year after the murder, for 4 months early in the investigation, the family quit talking with the police as part of their investigation, instead establishing a quote-unquote defense team consisting of 8 lawyers, 4 publicists, 3 private investigators, 2 handwriting analysis, and even a retired FBI profiler. The Ramseys say they were frustrated by the police's lingering on them themselves as suspects, and they could have been investigating other potential suspects and reportedly wanted to review evidence. But bolder police investigators have been keen to point out that they have investigated all avenues open to them. Since the murder, detectives have spoken to over 1,000 people in 19 states, acting on more than 21,000 tips. The assertion that there is viable evidence and leads we are not pursuing to include DNA testing is completely false, according to a police statement on the City of Boulder's government website. And of course, the next thing that doesn't make sense is why the Ramseys were accused of assisting a person. John and Patsy would eventually be officially exonerated by a judge following the examination of DNA evidence, a development which several experts felt was unwarranted. Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner said, quote, "Exonerating anyone based on a small piece of evidence that has not yet been proven to even be connected to the crime is absurd." In 2013, 4 pages of sealed documents were released, which gave a new sight into a grand jury that had been set up to investigate the Ramseys back in 1989. It emerged that the jury had voted to indict John and Patsy on charges of child abuse, leading to death and being accessories to the murder. The grand jury claimed that the parents rendered assistance to a person with intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery, detention, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, and punishment of such a person for the commission of a crime, knowing the person being assisted has committed and was suspected of the crime of murder in the first degree, and child abuse resulting in death. The third party referred to in the documents is unidentified, and the unsealing raised fresh questions as to what the grand jury speculated had happened on the day of JonBenet's death. Patsy Ramsey died from cancer in 2006, but in response to the unsealing, John Ramsey's lawyer argued that all the remaining documents ought to be published to give a clearer view of the aborted grand jury, which in the end never indicted the Ramseys. So, before we go, let me know your thoughts on all these things that still don't make sense, and give me your thoughts on them and try to explain what happened. And if you got anything else you'd like to add to this, let me know in the comment section below. As always, give me a thumbs up if you like your video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification button to be notified of future videos. And of course, you can support the channel by buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TCNS. As always, your support helps the channel grow, upgrade our equipment, bring in new hosts, be able to pay them, and eventually take this show on the road. As always, you can find us on all major podcast platforms, whether it's Good Pods, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from, you can find us. Just search True Crime Never Sleeps. And of course, thank you so much for watching and listening, and have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next time.